How many years had it been since she last felt the shape of her own life? Akari Tanaka, at 48, moved through her Kyoto apartment like a ghost, haunting rooms meticulously ordered by someone else's expectations. Grey cardigan over a beige blouse, dark slacks pressed sharp. Even the silver threads at her temples were meticulously banished each month, dyed back to a brown that felt increasingly alien. 6 months since her mother, the last bastion of filial duty, had passed, leaving not freedom, but a terrifying, echoing void. Her job at the municipal office, a fortress of beige filing cabinets and polite, sterile interactions, offered structure but no substance. Life felt like a perfectly folded napkin, crisp and unused. The travel brochure for Shigaraki lay on the polished table, an anomaly amidst the calm. Yumi's idea, of course. Her friend, bless her pragmatic heart, thought a change of scenery, a solo trip to the famed pottery town, might shake something loose. "You need this, Akari," Yumi had chirped over the phone, her voice a bright counterpoint to Akari's muted existence. "Just breathe different air. Buy yourself something pretty." Akari had agreed with the same quiet compliance she applied to most things, though the thought of navigating unfamiliar territory alone sent tendrils of anxiety tightening in her chest. What if she got lost? What if she couldn't understand the local dialect? What if nothing changed at all? Packing was an exercise in control. Each item folded precisely, tucked into the small suitcase with practiced efficiency. Sensible shoes, muted clothes, a small first aid kit, an armor against the unexpected. The train journey from Kyoto was a blur of receding cityscapes giving way to greener, more undulating hills. Stepping onto the platform in Shigaraki felt like entering a different time. The air smelled faintly of wood smoke, damp earth. Everywhere, ceramic tanuki statues, mischievous and plump, stood guard outside shops and homes, their comical expressions a stark contrast to Akari's own carefully neutral mask. Her guest house was simple, traditional, with tatami mats and a window overlooking a small, mossy garden. It was quiet, too quiet perhaps, amplifying the silence within her. The next day, clutching a map Yumi had printed, Akari ventured out. She bypassed the larger, more commercial galleries, seeking something specific mentioned in a pottery magazine she kept hidden like a secret indulgence, a small studio known for its unique ash glazes run by an aging master. It was tucked away down a narrow lane, marked only by a weathered wooden sign. Smoke curled lazily from a tall chimney nearby. Pushing open the slightly warped wooden door, she stepped into a space that felt both ancient and alive. Clay dust coated every surface, catching the light filtering through high windows. Shelves overflowed with pots in various stages of completion, some raw and grey, others bearing the rich, unpredictable textures of the kiln. An elderly man, frail but focused, sat hunched over a wheel, his hands moving with slow certainty. And near the stacked wood for the massive Noborigama climbing kiln built into the hillside outside, stood a younger man, perhaps in his late 20s or early 30s, wiping sweat from his brow with a clay-streaked forearm. He wore simple work clothes, stained and worn, and his dark hair was tied back loosely. He looked up as she entered, his gaze direct, curious. Akari felt a blush creep up her neck. She hadn't expected anyone else, certainly not someone so intense. She murmured a polite greeting, her voice barely audible over the whir of the wheel. She moved towards a shelf, displaying finished pieces, pretending an expertise she didn't possess. Her eyes landed on a small tea bowl, you know me. Its glaze was a deep, turbulent blue-green, flawed near the rim where the ash had settled thickly, creating a rough, almost scarred texture. It wasn't perfect, not like the pristine porcelain her mother had favoured, but it held a depth, a resilience that spoke to her. "That one," the young man's voice startled her. He had moved closer, silently. "It carries the story of the fire." He picked it up gently, turning it in his hands. His fingers were long, stained, surprisingly graceful despite the calluses. The Noborigama is unpredictable. Sometimes it gifts beauty, sometimes scars, often both. Akari could only nod, mesmerized by the way he spoke about the clay as if it were alive. "It's unique," she managed. He smiled then, a quick, easy smile that transformed his serious face, crinkling the corners of his eyes. "I am Sato Ren. I assist Master Ishikawa here." He gestured towards the old man, who grunted without looking up. "Tanaka Akari," she replied, bowing slightly. "I apologize for intruding." "No intrusion," Ren assured her. We don't get many visitors seeking out this old place." He placed the Yunomi back on the shelf. "Are you interested in pottery, Tanaka-san?" "I admire it," Akari said, feeling inadequate, from afar. She ended up buying the flawed Yunomi. Carrying it back to the guest house, wrapped carefully in paper, felt like carrying a small secret warmth. That evening she drank lukewarm tea from it, tracing the rough patch near the rim with her finger. It felt real, grounded, unlike the smooth, cold surfaces of her life back in Kyoto. Over the next few days, Akari found herself inventing reasons to walk past the studio again. Once, she claimed she wanted to ask about the firing schedule for the Noborigama. Ren explained the laborious process, the days of feeding wood into the chambers, the intense heat needed, his voice filled with a passion that was utterly foreign to her own muted world. Another time, she lingered outside, pretending to study the stacked firewood, until Ren emerged for a break, offering her a chipped mug of strong, bitter tea. They fell into quiet conversations. He spoke about the clay sourced from the nearby hills, its temperament, how it responded to different handling. He talked about Master Ishikawa's declining health, his own struggles to master certain techniques, the constant financial precariousness of dedicating oneself to traditional craft. There was no self-pity in his voice, only a fierce, quiet determination. Akari listened, mostly silent but absorbing everything. He reminded her, achingly, of the artist her parents had dismissed decades ago. The same fire, the same disregard for conventional stability. But Ren's presence didn't just evoke the ghost of that past loss. It sparked something else, a flicker of warmth, a dangerous curiosity about a life lived closer to the flame. The age gap felt like a chasm. He was nearer to her cousin's son's age than her own. What would people think? What would her parents have said? The familiar chorus of disapproval echoed in her mind, a phantom limb of ingrained duty. He was an artist, living hand to mouth. Unstable, unsuitable. Everything her carefully constructed life was meant to protect her from. Yet watching his hands shape the yielding clay, seeing the focused intensity in his eyes, she felt a pull towards that very instability, towards the authenticity he embodied. One afternoon, Ren invited her for a simple lunch at a nearby udon shop. Slurping noodles side by side in the small, bustling eatery felt strangely intimate. He asked about Kyoto, about her job. Akari described her work in vague, neutral terms, feeling the dullness of it settle heavily upon her. When she hesitantly mentioned her solo trip, Ren nodded thoughtfully. "Sometimes," he said, looking out at the steam rising from his bowl, "you need to step away from the familiar pattern to see its shape clearly." His words resonated, unsettling her further. Later, walking back towards the studio under a sky threatening rain, they took a slight detour through a path winding into the wooded hills behind the town. The air was crisp, smelling of pine needles and damp earth. Ren pointed out different types of trees, the specific clay deposits visible in a cutting by the path. He moved with an easy grace, perfectly at home in this natural setting. Akari, in her sensible city shoes, felt clumsy, out of place, yet a strange lightness bloomed in her chest, a feeling so unfamiliar it was almost alarming. She hadn't felt this present, this aware of the world around her in years. That evening, back in the sterile quiet of her guesthouse room, the anxiety surged. She called Yumi, needing the anchor of her friend's pragmatism. "Akari, how's Shigaraki? Finding lots of lovely pots." Yumi's cheerful voice crackled through the phone. "It's interesting, Yumi-san," Akari began, trying to sound normal. "The town is very quiet, traditional. And you met someone?" Yumi, perceptive as ever, picked up on the subtle hesitation in Akari's voice. "Just an assistant at one of the studios," Akari deflected quickly. "He's very knowledgeable about pottery." "Oh? Young? Old?" "Younger," Akari admitted, the word catching in her throat. There was a pause. "Akari," Yumi said, her tone softening slightly, laced with concern. "Are you okay? You sound far away." "I'm fine, Yumi-san. Just tired from walking." The lie felt flimsy, transparent. She couldn't articulate the turmoil Ren's presence had stirred, the impossible mix of attraction and fear, the sudden, terrifying glimpse of a different path. After hanging up, Akari sat by the window, watching the rain begin to fall, blurring the neat lines of the garden outside. She felt adrift, caught between the suffocating safety of her known life and the frightening allure of the unknown. For a day, she avoided the lane leading to the studio, busying herself with visits to other, safer galleries, the polished perfection of their wares leaving her cold. Her planned departure date loomed, only 2 days away. The return train ticket lay on the low table like a sentence. Kyoto waited with its predictable routines, its quiet emptiness. The thought filled her with a familiar sense of resignation, but now it was tinged with a sharp new ache. She found herself drawn back to Master Ishikawa's studio the next afternoon, telling herself it was simply to purchase one more small piece, a final memento. Ren seemed preoccupied, his brow furrowed as he examined a row of newly glazed pots near the kiln entrance. Master Ishikawa was nowhere to be seen. "A difficult firing?" Akari asked softly, approaching him. Ren looked up, his expression tight. The temperature dropped unexpectedly overnight. Some pieces, they didn't mature. He gestured towards a shelf where several pots sat dull, their glazes lifeless. There was a rawness in his disappointment that mirrored her own internal landscape. He ran a hand through his hair, leaving a streak of grey clay. It happens, part of the process, but still frustrating. They stood in silence for a moment, the air thick with unspoken things. The smell of wood smoke, clay, and Ren's quiet frustration filled the space. Akari felt an urge to offer comfort, but the words wouldn't form. Her own impending departure felt like a similar failure, a retreat from something nascent and fragile. "I came to say goodbye, Sato-san," she said finally, her voice steadier than she felt. "My train is tomorrow morning. Thank you for showing me around the studio, for the tea." She bowed formally. Ren looked at her, his gaze holding hers. The intensity was back, but softened with something else. Vulnerability, perhaps. He didn't return the bow immediately. He picked up a small unglazed vase from his workbench, turning it over in his hands. It was simple, elegant, with subtle throwing rings visible. "I've been working on this," he said, his voice quiet, "trying a new form." He looked from the vase to her, then back again. "Your visits, Tanaka-san, they brought a different energy to this place. A quiet focus, it helped." He paused, seeming to weigh his words. Is this really goodbye? The simple question hung in the air, heavy as unshed rain. It wasn't a declaration, not a demand. It was an acknowledgement, an appeal. Don't just disappear. The carefully constructed walls around Akari's heart seemed to tremble. Kyoto, her job, the neat apartment, the suffocating weight of should, it all felt distant, less real than the man standing before her, his hands stained with earth, offering not security, but a shared moment, of fragile honesty. Kyoto, her job, the neat apartment, the suffocating weight of should, it all felt distant, less real than the man standing before her, his hands stained with earth, offering not security, but a shared moment. Fear warred with a desperate, unfamiliar yearning. To retreat meant safety, predictability, a slow fading. To stay, what did staying even mean? It was terrifying, illogical, irresponsible. She looked at Ren, truly looked at him, saw the passion that burned beneath his quiet exterior, the dedication etched into his hands, the flicker of hope mixed with weariness in his eyes. She saw herself reflected there, the longing, the fear, the years of holding back. The decision wasn't a lightning strike, but a slow, seismic shift within her, a quiet unfolding. "I think," Akari heard herself say, her voice barely a whisper, yet clearer than anything she'd said in years, "I need to change my train ticket." Ren didn't move, but the tension in his shoulders eased almost imperceptibly. A slow understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by a small, hesitant smile that reached them this time, warm and genuine. He didn't ask why, or for how long. He simply nodded, a silent acceptance of her small, momentous act of defiance. Later, back at the guest house, Akari made the call, cancelling the return ticket, booking her room for 3 more days. Each word spoken into the receiver felt like chipping away at the old stone edifice of her life. Then she called Yumi. "Yumi-san? It's Akari." "Akari, ready for home?" "Actually, something came up. I'm staying a few more days." A beat of silence. "Oh? Is everything all right?" Yumi's voice held a careful neutrality now, sensing the shift. "Yes," Akari said, the word feeling surprisingly true. "Everything is all right. I just need a little more time here." Another pause, then Yumi's pragmatic warmth returned, tinged with something new, curiosity, perhaps even vicarious excitement. "Okay, Akari, take your time. Call me if you need anything." The next day dawned bright and clear, the autumn air crisp. Akari walked back to the studio, not as a visitor this time, but as someone who had chosen, however tentatively, to remain. Ren was already at the wheel, his focus absolute. He looked up as she entered, offering a quiet nod of greeting. The air felt different between them, lighter, yet charged with unspoken potential. After a while, he stopped the wheel, wiping his hands on